here with Raymond Wong, third generation of Choo Khueh Chang. So Raymond is helping with the family business. Raymond, so how did this all start?
Oh, it started as early as in 1945. My grandmother, Kim Choo, she started learning how to cook Peranakan food at the young age of 12, 13 years old. And back then it was just after the World War II. So from what she remembered, her grandmother would make Peranakan kuehs, kueh, kueh ambon or kuehs and stuff to actually sell from home to actually earn some family expenses money. So Kueh Chang is one of the things that she actually learned from her maternal grandmother. Yeah. So that's why in the 60s, when she decided to do full-scale making Kueh Chang, she's one of the earliest generation of women, especially Peranakan women, it's not very common of them, to actually come out of their home to sell food outside.
Where is your first outlet and how many stores do you have?
Our main factory has always been in Choo Place. Originally, my grandmother was actually selling her dumplings under a banyan tree. Yeah, beside a kopitiam. And around the 1970s, then she shifted into the kopitiam because the government said, okay, we cannot sell under the tree anymore. We have some health standards to maintain and hygiene stuff. So they encouraged my grandmother to take a stall in the kopitiam, and that's what she did. Then my grandmother and my dad were very hardworking people. So in no time, they actually gained a lot of following and support by the first shop, which is just beside the kopitiam. So when the baton was handed over to my parents, shortly after that, my dad bought over the kopitiam and we extended 2 units at Choo Place. Yeah.
So interesting. You see, no hokkering last time, but then they expand using your most popular rice dumpling, a favorite among the customers.
Originally, my grandmother started out making Nyonya dumplings. But because the way she makes the dumplings, the rice is so delicious, over the period, my grandfather, who is from China, from Fujian, started to ask her to do more variations of Hokkien dumpling. And later on, people who are from the Cantonese community start asking us, can you do Cantonese style dumplings for us? So over the period, we have a huge variety of dumplings which are all popular. So for me, why I like the Nyonya dumpling so much is because of the rempah inside. Though the ingredients is simple, just lean pork with winter melon, the spices is really a lot. There's Chinese, Malay, Indian spices and spices from Indonesia, all cooked inside. So can you imagine? It's not easy to cook with so much strong tasting spices in it. And to Peranakan women to be able to learn from the local communities how to cook with such spices and balance it so nice, it's really not easy.
Do you all use food dyes or are there any preservative additives like MSG and all?
Food dyes we don't use.
Oh, okay.
Because for the bunga telang, the blue color cannot be replicated. It has to be from the flowers. If you use a different color, you can see it's not.
Yeah, it's quite fake, right? Maybe too vibrant and all.
Correct. Maybe too turquoise.
Yeah, too turquoise.
Instead of
Very
being
fake.
Prussian blue.
True, true. Then it defeats the purpose. Do you all use any chemicals in your ingredients?
No, not really.
Oh, that's great. That's
Not allowed, so.
Yeah, not allowed. Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. For what, right? You already have all the nice spices, condiments, and flavors. You should tap on that instead of using chemicals.
Yeah.
Yeah. Have you ever thought of doing more gluten-free options and maybe healthier rice like the brown rice?
We ever thought of it, but most customers still prefer the glutinous version. Because when you eat it, the texture is really different from just using brown rice. And secondly is the duration of shelf life. If customers buy those dumplings made with brown rice, or even some people are doing their own versions using pulut hitam, which is the black rice. It's another form of glutinous rice. You notice that the dumplings don't last long.
So that's the reason why it's glutinous rice.
So
I asked this
glutinous rice will
because
still be a better option.
I see because now all the food there's the evolution of going into the healthier option and all. So like a lot of elderly they love dumplings, but because it's glutinous rice, they
Yeah.
only can eat so much only.
That's why nowadays we do mini version.
Oh, mini version ah.
Yeah.
Nice.
Because the
Wow.
smaller versions are easier for the older folks to eat. It's easier to introduce to the little children to experience and taste what is a traditional dumpling.
Okay. So they can divide out their portions and not, eat in one sitting.
About the Peranakan culture, and then tell me about the collection you have here. How did you acquire them? When and how?
For Peranakan community, it is widely known that very early generations of Peranakan Chinese people, their ancestry would be likely their ancestors from China, and when they came down to this part of the world, they may take local indigenous women or Malay women as their wives, and they set up a second home. So their children, though born locally, were still considered part of the Chinese community.
Yeah.
So the term Peranakan actually came in really very much later in the history.
Sometimes I have this word they call it. What is that? This modern word, culture appropriation. I'm not very into that because I think when we wear somebody else's clothes, for example, which actually, from my point of view, is to honor and respect.
Yes, because cultural appropriation comes into picture when you do not understand
Yes.
the cultural significance behind it. Because if you know, you respectfully wear it in a way that is respecting the person's culture. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, cultural appropriation would also mean that when you don't make any effort to understand, you try to recreate without having any empathy of people's culture. So let's say, you know that dark blue and white is mourning color. So if you are going to someone's Tuasajit, let's say you're a Westerner, then you wear a black and white kebaya with black and white sarong skirt and attend to somebody's Tuasajit, people will feel offended. You're attending my funeral, is it?
Yeah, because you don't. You just
Then this is what I mean by you
by-
don't respect is culturally
for
appropriating.
understanding.
Yeah. But if we have an open mind that anybody who appreciates culture, you understand my culture, you wear it appropriately, I think it's perfectly normal.
Hey, I was also very interested in this gallery of yours. You have such a lovely gallery here. So I wonder whether when do you start it, how you started the collection? Is it a family collection? Or contributions from friends, and is there any favorite one that you have?
Over the years, most of my collection were collected or given by friends.
Ooh, really?
Very few items were from my grandmother. My grandmother, she was saying that in the early days, she would do beaded shoes, but she don't own it. Because being from a poor family, you make the shoes or you make the bantao decorations is to sell to the jarong man. The jarong man sell to the rich Peranakan people.
Okay, so the jarong means the middleman.
The middleman that sells all the sewing materials.
Okay.
So later when she was staying with us at one point in time, when she knew that I was doing this business, she gave me a pair of her own beaded slippers that she actually bought over from another lady, her old good friend, also same name Kim Choo also.
Shall we walk around this gallery and maybe you can show us a piece or two of your favorite one? But there's one particular one that I'm so enchanted with, but I'll tell you which one. But you want to show me? Show us?
One of the two items at the background that I have is one of the things that I actually like.
Okay.
For example, the first piece right in the center is actually a piece of batik Tok Wee. Tok Wee means it's a table altar cloth.
The one behind?
Yes, that is the altar cloth.
Okay.
It's one of my oldest batik collection. It's a very good testimonial that when our early ancestors first came from China, and if when they reach here, they need to semayang to the Dato, say, oh, thanks for blessing me a smooth sail. But the thing is, you will need an actual Chinese altar cloth. But the thing is, if they forget to bring or whatever circumstances, I can't have them off, they actually got the local Indonesians to draw it for them. And this is one of the early prototypes. The drawings, if you compare to the newer pieces made by the Indonesians, the drawings are vastly different. This one, right, is because the China people, the merchants are not artists, So when they draw their sketches, most probably is their ugly drawings were being translated into the batik cloth.
But very modern.
Yeah, but the thing is, if you look at how they arrange the five lions,
These are lions.
yeah, the
Okay.
five
And
lions,
is the meaning of the lion? Does the lion meaning something?
five luck coming in,
Oh,
in
five
full
lah.
linen.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, and this design is exactly the same design as that piece which my mom bought from her neighbor, the late artist Ming Ting.
Is it a tiger or lion?
Can you see the five lion up there?
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
The way it's being represented
Right.
traditionally,
Right.
and the
Same.
one in batik version.
Mm.
So you can see and compare and contrast that the inspiration that
Hi Raymond. Yeah, so your show is so interesting, I'm always intrigued by the story of the kebaya. Can you tell me something about the kebaya? Because there could be different kebayas from different countries, right? And also what is unique about the Peranakan kebaya?
As we talk about kebaya
Mm.
and Singapore, how did kebaya come to this part of the world? Kebaya actually originated from a kaftan cloth called abaya, which was likely brought over by the Arab traders or the Gujarat Indian Muslim traders. Because Singapore used to be part of the maritime Silk Road. So anything that they bring in from the west, they will definitely pass by to Southeast Asia, and they would bring in things that was fashionable and sought out after traded items. So kebayas was actually one of the clothes that came down to this part of the world and traded in different parts. That's why you see that even Thailand, Singapore, Malaysia, Indonesia, there is traces of kebaya-like kind of clothes appearing in different areas. Sewing machines from America was brought in by the Europeans, and that's the machine that you know of, which is a treadle sewing machine. So that kind of machines was brought into Southeast Asia, and that would be around the 1920s and 30s.
Okay.
Then coincidentally, it was the Great Depression. Laces was getting more and more rare to find in Southeast Asia. So the women were starting to use imported good quality threads, embroidery threads, and they embroider clothes with the sewing machine. And they embroider all the lace style motifs and cut work onto the clothes. And when more people are interested in making their own kebayas at home, they wanted more interesting designs and colors. So the Europeans are bringing in more and more beautiful colored threads. And that's where you start to see the kebayas slowly becoming more and more colorful.
And how do they match? Because how I noticed also you carry a lot of batik, right? So are there differences between, let's say, the Malaysian batik, the Peranakan batik, and the Indonesian batik?
Okay, all our Peranakan batiks in my shop, we actually bring them in from Indonesia. Nonya sarongs has always been from Indonesia in the past to today. Yeah, it's just that, like I mentioned a while ago, Singapore used to be one of the port cities in the Maritime Silk Road. So anywhere there's Chinese and where there's ports, you notice that Chinese would be around that area. So in Indonesia, there's these regions called Cirebon, Pekalongan, Semarang. These are areas where there's a lot of Chinese settled over there, and they later started to produce batiks to sell to the other Chinese community or the Eurasian community to use. And the batiks that they produce are very interesting because they try to amalgamate Chinese and European designs onto the sarong skirt. And the colors are all very colorful and vibrant, that they feel that it contrasts well with the kebaya. So over the period, there are more and more colors imported from Europe, the chemical dyes. So the batik slowly became more and more vibrant and colorful, that you need equally matching clothes to go with the sarong.